Good afternoon, good evening, namaskar, bonjour and hola to all the learners from across the globe today. Welcome to yet another session of learning with me, Dr. Anju Sabharwal. The last 2 days may have helped all the learners revisit some of the forgotten avenues. But before I begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate the very platform for today's knowledge sharing session, the International Internship University. International Internship University is a leading virtual education system, global brand confederation, which is the most valuable and trusted worldwide and well reputed in delivering innovative programs. Globally, it is a trusted name for quality training programs and is committed to providing better and virtual education to all the young learners across the globe. IIU is metamorphosing the conventional education system by cutting down the additional costs and providing access to more than 1,000 plus courses and internships to their e-learners across the globe with the help of its 1,000 plus global educators. In a short span of time, IIU has spread its wings in 195 countries and 6 continents under the strong and able leadership of its visionary founder, Mr. Piyush Pandit Sir. I, Dr. Anju Sabharwal, am thankful to the team IIU and the founder, Mr. Piyush Pandit Sir, for giving me this opportunity to conduct these knowledge sharing sessions for learners from across the globe. Thank you so much, sir. Well, welcome back again to this last session today. So the flow of the session would be defining a language. And since we've been looking at different skills over the past 2 days, today we will be looking at the skill of writing. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about the core elements of writing. Then we will move on to the types of writing that exist. And lastly, to strategies to improve our writing skills. Like I've always maintained that it is very essential for us to understand that every skill bears its own importance in a language. So briefly, what is a language? It is again a medium of expression to enable communication between individuals, organizations, and countries across the globe. It serves as a vehicle to establish collaboration between nations. It's a form of transmission for relaying information to concerned individuals or groups. And it is not just limited to written expression and may take a varied form. But for today, like the past 2 days, we will dabble only with the traditional meaning of language that we use to convey ideas, thoughts, opinions, and perspectives. So essentially, we've looked at the 3 skills of reading, listening, and speaking. And today we will look at the skill of writing. Just to recap, writing is a productive skill. The reason being that we have assimilated information from maybe texts that we have read or things that we have read and now are synthesizing the information that we've gathered into our own form of writing and most likely in our own words. That is why writing becomes a productive skill and works in tandem with either listening or reading. So writing skills also include all the knowledge and abilities that are related to expressing yourselves through the written word. That means whatever we feel or whatever emotions that we go through or whatever opinions that we form after looking at facts is included in what we put out as a written word. Of course, it is also requires a sound understanding of grammar, spelling, and punctuation. There are, of course, languages where grammar does not play an essential role. For example, the Southeast Asian languages like Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, all of them have characters. So essentially, they have a pictorial form of language, and hence their words or their communication happens through that. But since we are looking at English, we will look at the areas of grammar, spelling, and punctuation, which makes it imperative for us to be skilled at the writing skill. And of course, for any written communication to be effective, we need to ensure that it is clear, concise, complete, and courteous. So there are, in fact, 4 C's that we need to keep in mind when we are penning down something. If we are just penning down something for our own purpose or for our own use, maybe we could use a few slang words, but if we are interacting with someone else, or it is a written form of communication which needs to be sent to someone, we need to ensure that these 4 C's are met and taken care of. Of course, people with slightly proficient writing skills can also have the ability to match their tone or their word choices to different situations and peoples. Of course, they can make use of advanced writing skills, as in using more flowery language or more descriptive language to communicate their ideas, and hence be able to engage the writers slightly well. But it doesn't go to say that if we are not so adept at our writing skills, we will not be able to convey our meaning to the reader or the person towards whom the written communication is directed. Essentially, that is why the 4 C's need to be met before we go any further. So the basics for any written communication are the 4 C's that I've just discussed. It should be clear, it should be concise, complete, and of course, we need to maintain the decorum of courteousness or courtesy. Moving on, let us look at the core elements of writing skills. There are essentially 5 core elements in writing. The first one being conciseness. Now, what do I mean by conciseness? I mean the clarity or the effectiveness of a communication to convey a message. Obviously, it means that we include only relevant details in order to communicate our messages effectively. For example, I've got an example over there. After seeing your presentation skills, I've concluded that you are one of the best orators on our team. It avoids unnecessary confusion. It is very crisp. It gives the person's opinion straightforward after what has been observed, right? Moving on, we have clarity. Clarity helps readers to understand the message that we are trying to convey. By bringing clarity to our writing, we can, reduce instances of misinformation, misconception, miscommunication, and obviously mistakes that arise out of an unclear message. There can be a different perception depending upon the words that we use. So clarity usually entails using simple language so that the person to whom we are sending this communication is able to understand what is being said. For example, use your best judgment to decide whether you should build the web design from the start or update the existing one. Click on the link below to see the details of the new project. If you have any questions, direct them to your project head. So very clear instructions have been given in this communication, giving the person a choice of deciding between a new web design or updating an old one. And of course, they've also included details of what the new project demands. so that the person can take a clear-cut decision as to what needs to be done. Tone. Tone essentially refers to the way you communicate your message through writing, okay? And it will also communicate the emotions that you have when you put down something on a written format. Of course, we need to remember that when we are communicating professionally, we need to maintain a professional tone. We cannot, use layman's language to communicate. For example, again, thank you for sending over the web design on such a short notice. Have highlighted a few inaccuracies and attached a more detailed version conforming to the client's requirement. Please get the revised design to me latest by Wednesday morning. Feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions. So in fact, in spite of the fact that, some errors have been pointed out, the person has begun very nicely with an appreciation by thanking the person for putting in the effort. Right. And he's also stated very clearly what he would like done and by when, so that the person receiving this communication has a very clear understanding of the time that is involved. Moving on, we have what we call the active voice. Active voice actually cuts out the confusion, making our writing more clear, more accessible, and more engaging. It, of course, is preferred over passive voice because sometimes passive voice, misconstrues a thought process and leads to confusion in a person's mind. And active voice always flows more clearly and makes the writing more persuasive. For example, call the presenter about the webinar on Monday morning and ask whether we can shift the webinar to Wednesday afternoon. If she agrees, send out date change emails to the attendees. If she disagrees, remind me on Monday morning to talk to her. So very clearly, the task has been outlined, and the reader would be able to quickly understand what is asked, right? Of course, coming to the next point, that is grammar and punctuation. It is very important that grammar and punctuation is used correctly to make our messages very, very clear. And it engages the readers without miscommunication and makes it more effective. For example, it says, just give me a minute, please. Our client requires the use of word processing programs, blogging platforms, design tools, communication tools, and collaboration apps for the next project. So very clearly, by punctuating the different types of apps and programs that the client needs, the senior executive has communicated to the design team as to what needs to be done. So essentially, these are the 5 core elements which make writing more effective and make communication in the written format more clear and easy to understand by the receiving party. Sorry. Okay. Now moving on from the core elements, I thought I would dabble about a few writing types and try and explain how each one is different. So there are basically 4 general stylistic categories in which writing falls, and it is differentiated by the type and the purpose. And most of the times we try and use these styles while also incorporating our own style of writing into that piece. Now, an expository writing is usually used for a more information-based or a fact-based write-up rather than storytelling. So we are dealing with exact facts in an expository writing, like in non-fiction books or scientific writing or a technical writing or news articles. If you pick up the how to use guide with a gadget, you will find that it is written precisely without any emotion and to the point. So it's not telling us a story, but it's telling us the way how to kind of use that particular gadget. It may be a new phone, it may be a new laptop, or anything else, right? Now, a descriptive writing style, and the next one that I'm going to talk, have a very thin line between the two. A descriptive style uses more of figurative language. Now, when I talk about figurative language, I mean different ways in which you can, describe a thing. For example, if I were to give you a simple sentence as I walked down the road, it's very simple. Now, if I have to use descriptive, if I have to describe it further, I could write, I shuffled slowly down the long and dark alleyway, right? So I've added adjectives, I've added phrases to make it more descriptive, so the person who's reading it can imagine. So descriptive writing takes into account not just figurative language. Of course, here I've just used adjectives and adverbs, but other sensory details to paint a picture in the reader's mind. Usually you find a lot of descriptive style in poetry writing, and the poets usually tend to, use words which would help the person imagine. Of course, it's a limited use of words, but still the choice of words is very descriptive, so the person can understand the emotion and be in sync with the poet. Moving on, we have a narrative writing style. Now, a narrative writing style is again followed in a story where you have a plot, characters, setting, and is used for creative writing. So, this style is usually used when we want to put out, craft a novel, novella, screenplay, even, small, you can say one-act plays. We would try and build up the plot or build up the characters by, being more narrative, trying to give more detail about where the entire scene is set so that the reader can imagine. Of course, examples of narrative writing, I've just chosen two. One by Ernest Hemingway, the short story, The Old Man and the Sea, and by Stephen King, The Shining. Moving on, we have persuasive writing. So a persuasive writing tries to influence readers to engage in the writer's point of view. That means the author is trying to get the readers to accept his point of view by, using words which are very persuasive. And it could be through letters of recommendation in academic writing and cover letters. And of course, mostly found in promotion and publicity material that advertising houses use to, position a product in the market. There's a lot of persuasive writing which is used to encourage consumers to be attracted and select the given product, right? So I think very briefly, I've tried to lead you through the 4 different styles of writing, and of course, the elements of, or the core elements which are involved in writing, right? Moving on, let's move on to now strategies which we could use. Many of us might be using many of them, but there could be some which you may have forgotten. So this is just a way to engage you and revisit things that we have, kind of brushed under the carpet. So The first one is making most of every word. One of the essential keys to good writing is that we need to be very succinct and choose each word wisely, because even in English, we have many words which we keep using repetitively. Like, for example, nice. Everything we see becomes nice because maybe we don't have the vocabulary, or at that point in time, we do not have the word. But yes, nice could also represent something which is beautiful. Nice could also represent something which is creative. So expressing oneself as clearly and as briefly as possible is only possible if we are very clear in our thought process and choose the word wisely. If word and word, works for maybe many words, it's always better to do that. But if, let's say, a phrase has a better impact, then of course we should choose the phrase. And always when you're using a particular word, let's try and use familiar language and vocabulary, because that's how the reader or the receiver, whoever it may be, will be able to engage with your content and understand something very easily. Of course, we can find better ways of expressing ourselves. Please do remember that writing is one skill that even if we are at the very proficient level of the language, if you read it again, whatever you've written, you will always come up with a better version, right? So writing allows you to revisit your own writings and, put it across in the best way. Of course, the best way to handle any writing and make it very simple to communicate is to focus on shorter sentences, because shorter sentences have an effective impact on whoever is the reader, whether it is your student, whether it is your boss, whether it is, maybe readers across the globe who are trying to read through a novel that you've put in. Of course, if you have a lot of information, it is not necessary to put it all together in one sentence, because sometimes what happens is that, with too much information coming through in a single sentence, the reader may lose the entire essence of what you want to say. So it always makes it possible, a better reading experience or a better engaging experience for readers if we use shorter sentences. And it also makes us, the readers engage and understand the content very easily if you use shorter sentences. Again, especially if you are reading, like yesterday I said, you have short blurbs either in the front of the book, in the front cover, or maybe a short paragraph right at the end. If you look at those, they are written in very crisp, in a very crisp form, so that, if I'm picking up a new book, it becomes easy for me to understand what the content is, and then decide whether I want to read it or not, and it also allows me to skim quickly what exactly is this book about. And that's what we do actually these days, because there's so much content available, not just in the form of hard books in hand, but also online. We've got so many platforms where we can engage in reading pieces of literature. Of course, like I said, writing is a skill which allows us to, it's not like a spoken skill where once the words leave your mouth, you can't retract. But yes, in a written format, you can, if you're writing an email, before you click the send button, you can go over what you've written and, understand and rework on it before you actually send it across. So shorter sentences always benefit because they allow the message to be communicated very clearly and concisely. Of course, we can have longer sentences to add essence, because sometimes shorter sentences also become monotonous for the reader, because it takes away the interest. Just as when we are beginning to read, there comes a pause and, it breaks our reading flow. Moving on, of course, shorter sentences means shorter paragraphs. Yes, again, the intent being that it becomes easier for the reader to read and understand the information that we want to, pose across to the readers. But yes, of course, it will also allow us to kind of lay out our entire thought process in a more appealing layout, and help the readers be engrossed. Of course, it also has to do with the kind of writing we're doing. Of course, in less formal writings, shorter sentences and shorter paragraphs acceptable. But if you're going in for an academic style writing, or you're writing a research paper, definitely we would have longer sentences and longer paragraphs, because there would be a lot more detail that we would need to insert in our research papers to make the entire concept clear to the reader. Moving on, avoid monotonous passages. Of course, again, flowing on from the way that shorter sentences make reading worthwhile, shorter passages make it worthwhile, and of course, having less monotonous passages would also engage the author, the readers, in a more interesting manner. And if you feel that something is being too long and winded, you could change the format. You could begin with a different kind of a beginning. For example, let's say I have to write a paragraph about myself, and I follow a sentence structure like, hello everybody, my name is Dr. Anju Sabharwal. I'm 53 years old. I reside in India. I am an English teacher, and so on and so forth. It is going to become monotonous because I'm using a similar kind of sentence structure to describe myself. And of course, the moment someone who's reading it, they will quickly identify that my English skills are not so developed, right? We can vary how we introduce sentences to break this monotony in passages by using dependent clauses, using words. So I've just taken 3-4 examples to just enlighten you as to what can be done. So you can improve these instances by using a transitional expression. However is helping us understand that there are certain skills that she has or lacks, but there are certain skills which she needs help with. So however, she needed help with grammar, right? An adverb clause: until her writing improves, she will continue to struggle in her work. Okay, so we've begun the sentence with an adverb clause, which defines as to what are the problems that she could suffer from. You could have an adverb, at the beginning of the sentence also, where they are also known as frontal adverbs, because they are right at the front of the sentence. Relentlessly, the writer scribbled on a pad of paper. Okay, you could also use a preposition phrase or a preposition. For example, to perform better, the actor must practice more. So this allows us to create that variation in sentences, yet keep them small as well. Okay, so we're not making them too long and winding to take away the interest of the reader. But of course, we are breaking out of the monotony that comes with using a similar sentence structure. Okay, using a natural and conversational tone always helps. Everybody has a distinct writing style. And usually, us as educators, when we are looking at students' work, we have this habit of, correcting their work. But we are in fact stifling our students, writing skills by making those corrections. I've come across educators who will reframe the sentence. Now, by reframing that sentence, you are actually letting your own style of writing come into a student's writing. So I feel we should allow our learners, if you're an educator or otherwise, use their own writing styles, because we have our own style, and it brings an individuality into that piece of writing. Because I have written it, maybe I have a very eloquent way of expressing myself, so it would be distinct and people could make out. For example, I know many years ago, I have a very distinct way of starting my communication to parents or to teammates. I usually put a quote to start my written form of communication, and the quote deals with what I want to address in my written communication. So one of my superiors, he was so you can say happy with the way I started, that in fact in the very first formal update that he had to give, or in his annual speech, he chose a poem which kind of put everything in perspective of what he was going to talk. And later on, he came across to me, he said, see, I picked up something new from you. So everybody has a distinct style, and I feel that even if we are taking care of young learners, we should not correct them correctly. Yes, if you feel something is not making sense, you could probably just put have some kind of marking which you discuss with them and tell them, see, this doesn't make sense, or don't you think this is too long-winded, or put a little comment that you could look at rephrasing it better, like what happens when we use something on digital platform. Sometimes you do get suggestions from the laptop telling you that I think you need to rephrase or look at it. Of course, yes, we need to be mindful of who we're writing to when we are putting written communication. If we are doing it in a very formal or a professional format, then of course we need to tone down our conversational style. But yes, if you're writing for pleasure, or you're just writing across a letter to a friend in an informal format, I think it would be appropriate even to use your normal conversational style. But here I would again like to point out that, there are certain things that we use in when we speak, but we cannot use the same words when we put our pens to paper, because the moment you put pen to paper, the writing comes formal. Okay, so the moment you have a written word, it goes from being informal to a formal tone. So we need to be very clear as to what we want to say. Of course, like I said before, active voice is essentially the most effective way to get your message across, and it helps you to put your point across very precisely and in a very crisp manner. Of course, I'm not saying that passive voice is incorrect. Yes, we do dabble with it in between when we write, but an active voice, especially in a professional scenario, helps to get the message across very quickly. And I've just taken a very simple sentence to just differentiate the two. I've chosen, he wrote the research paper, which is very clearly telling you who wrote what. And in passive format, it was the research paper was written by Jonathan. So making it a little bit more detailed, but adding the element of who's written it. Again, the same things are there, but in a different manner. So while both are grammatically correct, the active voice is more concise, and the other one being a little bit boring. It takes the interest out of the sentence. This is something which does happen with all writers. Okay, it's not that it's the level of proficiency which leads to this, but yes, sometimes because maybe lack of time, or we are not so focused on what we are writing, we tend to repeat words. So like I said earlier, we are blessed that when we write something, we have the provision of reviewing what we've written and using a different word. It could happen in a sentence, it could happen in a paragraph, or maybe in the content itself. So another way of actually, if you really want to use the same word, you could go for a simple thing as a synonym, if you want to keep it crisp, or if you have the liberty to engage in a more descriptive content, you could put it in a phrase or a group of course, our words when you write it down. Of course, inserting keywords and repetition always helps, but it is always important to understand that we are not overusing the same word. Yes, I understand in publicity or in promotion material, we tend to create that impact by repetition. Of course, I can, I can, in fact, give you an example where repetition has been used to create an impact. If I look at Martin Luther Jr.'s, speech, I have a dream, which he gives out to the audience. It was a desired impact that he wanted to create. That is why there was a repetition of that entire phrase. Yes, if that is what is the intent of what we're writing, definitely helps, but still we need to understand that we don't overdo it because we want to create an impact. So we need to be very careful for word repetition and see where it is necessary and avoid it where it does not serve the purpose. This again is something which is very, very interesting, because I think it is how you, even if you title your books or you title anything that you write, and I'm talking not in a professional scenario. Of course, yes, professional scenario would work where you have a promotion campaign or an advertisement that you're putting across. And of course, in a newspaper report, it is what attracts the attention of the reader. So even the title of the book attracts a person's attention and people pick it up. I usually do that because the title intrigues me as to what does the person want to tell me in this, or what is this story going to be about. So being able to craft compelling headlines is a very, very good technique to use when you're writing. Maybe initially you might struggle with it, but as we get a hang of it, I'm sure we all are able to come up with headlines which do attract attention. Of course, it can be helped by including numbers. You could have adjectives, you could have positioning words, especially in an advertisement or a publicity campaign that you want to run for maybe your organization, or maybe for your school. There's you can say a fundraising event, and you want to attract as many people to come and buy products made by students. Definitely you are going to use some kind of a positioning word there. to exaggerate an important benefit, because promotion is always an exaggeration. Not to say that it is a false exaggeration, but yes, we need to make things larger than life, especially so in, when we may write scripts for movies. If you look at a book and you look at a movie version, there will be a lot of difference. And I've had a lot of my friends come back to me if I've suggested and told them, why don't you go and watch this movie? They would say, but the book was more entertaining. It had more depth. But precisely there, the author has the, relaxed environment of where he can use words. But in a movie, they have a limited time span, and sometimes we need to dramatize it and exaggerate things so that people are engaged and enjoy the movie. Of course, targeted audiences are essentially a key perspective that you need to keep in mind when you're penning down thoughts, as well as, words like comprehensive guide and the like, to ensure that you are able to communicate your thoughts and processes to the readers. Moving on. Just give me a minute. A very good technique, especially when you have to draft anything, is using a mind map or an outline. What do I mean by mind map? Let's say you want to write poetry on maybe seasons, right? So a mind map would have the central idea of your poem would be seasons, and then you would branch out into different thought processes which come. What are the thoughts that are triggered the moment you hear seasons, or something comes up in your mind? So all the different ideas that come to your mind, if we pen it down before we start writing, it gives us more clarity. It gives us more, conciseness to what we want to put down. And sometimes you need to do that so that you can develop a structured writing to meet the purpose of writing. For example, your supervisor wants you to, create a list of do's and don'ts for using a certain gadget. So all the things that come up to your mind, you could probably draw out an outline or a mind map. So it helps you get clarity as to what you need to include. And it also serves as a guiding map for your writing. You always have, it in front of your eyes, and, okay, I've touched upon this. In fact, it is a very good way of ensuring that your writing flows in a proper manner, and that neither the beginning or the end gets, outweighed by either, because you haven't paid attention, and maybe you've started off firing on all 100 cylinders when you started out. So your beginning is very elaborate and very descriptive, and then slowly, because maybe paucity of time, or maybe because you've become disengaged because it's taken so much of effort, you try to wrap it up, and so it looks like an imbalanced written piece. So it gets you, it's not the absolute path, but it keeps you on the path. So you are able to, divide your written script, whatever you want to write, into a more balanced outcome, and help the person who's reading it also understand the flow and essentially what needs to be communicated. So this is a very good technique that you can use while you're writing. And trust me, it helps you to improve your writing, make it more structured, make it more concise, and make it more clear, and a more balanced kind of writing. Of course, this is very important. Before we even start writing, we need to understand as to who is this piece of content being targeted at. That means who are the people who are going to pick up this piece and read. Who am I directing this written piece towards? Is it for a group of librarians, or am I writing an easy to-do guide for amateur photographers, or are they beginners in their fields, or are they professionals? So your kind of writing would have to match your target audience. Of course, it will also allow you to use the right tone for your written product, what words to include, and how to format it to have the highest impact. Sometimes we use marketing techniques as in which we think will have an impact, but turn out to be a negative marketing impact. Okay, so it is very essential to understand who the audience is, who am I catering it to. If I'm handling a group of maybe 8 to 10-year-olds, if I'm taking the scenario of a school, then I need to ensure that what I write for them, it needs to be in a tone which is easy for them to understand. The vocabulary used is very simple, so every one of them can understand, because I'm sure a group of maybe 28 to 10-year-olds would have people who are adept at the language and others who are not so good. So I need to be very, very clear before I put my pen to paper and before I even outline my thoughts or make a mind map as to why am I writing this piece of text. It is very essential. Sometimes we just start writing, we forget, and because we are in that thought process, we just ramble on and write things, and it does not create the impact that we hope that it would. Of course, this is something I feel every one of us can use and should use without being, upset. Oh, I'm like, for example, if I'm good at if I'm proficient at my writing skills, I should not have the thing that, oh, why do I need to use an editing tool? I'm good at it. I can edit my own work. I don't. But editing can be quite tough even for a person who's written it very passionately, right? So if I need to review my work, I may find that, oh, there's nothing that I need to cut out, or I don't need to rewrite this, or I don't need to rework on this. And more so for beginners, because as it is, we're struggling with our written skills, and then on top of it, we don't really understand how this how can I make it better? So an editing tool always comes to rescue and allows us to improve our writing piece or writing process and refine it so that it fine tunes it to a standard which is acceptable across the entire spectrum. So some editing tools that I have also used at times include Grammarly, Hemingway. They have different kinds of tools within these apps which allow you to, reword sentences, reposition things, rephrase things for you. And sometimes what happens, because we're so much into scripting it, we cannot go beyond. It's like, having a layman. Sorry, very sorry for this. Please excuse me. Very sorry for this. So it's like getting a layman to look at your piece of work and give you a better insight, right? Of course, the last one is something I think we all seek. And so it applies to writing as well. Because we may be stuck in one kind of writing, right? So to break out for writers to find inspiration is by reading authors that we really enjoy. And here I just want to say that motivation is intrinsic. That means is inward. It's a force which gets us to put pen to paper. Inspiration is extrinsic, or it's an outward pull. So if I have to give it in a more physics oriented concept, so motivation is the push, which is an inward push, which allows us to write. And inspiration is an outward pull, which makes us more creative, which allows us to open up and, improve upon what we can write. So probably you could also, of course, we could get affected by the way they write. That's okay. But you would also have your own elements of your own style. And in fact, this is something that I have always done, even as a student. I remember before my English exams, I would be listening to English songs so that I could pick up certain words and phrases which I could possibly use in my writings in the test tomorrow. So inspiration is very, very important for all of us. And even if we are at the top of our game, we are amongst the best professionals, whether be an educator, whether be a manager or a CEO or a painter or an artist or whatever. I think we need to continually inspire ourselves by looking outwards, find inspirations in things that we like, and give a new life to our own writing skills. I find this to be the most important skill or thing which I use to constantly egg myself to work better, to write better, and write differently, right? And bring a novelty to my own writings. Of course, like always, I think I've tried to bring websites which could help us in our reading skills, in our writing skills, or even our listening and speaking skills. So I've got around 10 different apps or online websites where you could go and use the tools that are available to help make your writings even better. Of course, the last one will raise a few eyebrows, but trust me, I have tried using ChatGPT to express something that I wanted very differently. And surprisingly, it came out quite interestingly as well, and probably more concisely than I expected. Grammarly, I've mentioned. Quillbot is another one that allows us to use different kinds of tools that it has, like paraphrasing, rephrasing, and stuff. So you could try your hand at this. I was very intrigued by the ChatGPT, so I thought I will try it out myself. And you can do it without actually logging in. You can use a free version, and it does do a little bit for you. I just tried it to see if it works or not. Okay. With this, I come to my learning session. And again, I would like to thank you all for being with me throughout for all these 3 days. And I hope I've added value to your learning. And again, let me take this opportunity to thank the platform IIU, and especially more so its founder, and for me, an inspiring role model, Mr. Piyush Pandit sir, for diversifying education into a digital and a virtual platform. Thank you so much. This is Dr. Anju Sabharwal signing off, and I hope I've added value to your learnings today. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night. Stay safe and take care.